and welcome to this week's Happy Hour. So today is Black Friday, which I do not doubt that you are already aware of, because if you're like me, your email, your social media, even your phone has been blowing up for weeks about this. Black Friday used to be a one-day sale, a bit like Boxing Day. But if you've noticed over the last few years, Boxing Day sales, Black Friday sales go for weeks, not days. And it's really hard to avoid the kind of frantic internal chaos that these sales events trigger in us. And it's not an accident. The sales people behind these are using some very well-known cognitive biases and cognitive triggers, behavioral triggers, to encourage us to buy more stuff, usually that we don't need. And so over the next few weeks, I'm going to be talking a bit of a survival guide to the silly season. And it really feels like the silly season starts with the lead up to Black Friday. And it has that really frantic, stressed, burnout energy. And this seems to be where it really picks up pace. So we'll start with some of the neuroscience and the reasons why these triggers are so effective. And then at the end, I'll show you 3 tips on how you can take the control or the power back and perhaps give yourself some space between you and the sale. So the first trigger that most sales will use, particularly during these types of sales, is scarcity. So you might see this as only 3 left, or limited time only access, must end. It gives the impression that even if there are thousands of items, that if you don't act quickly, you will miss out. And this triggers a really powerful part of our brain, and all of our fear centers, our threat and survival centers, particularly in the amygdala, which is our emotion center. And it triggers a similar response to us as if there is a shortage of, say, food. And that's what that loop is designed for, so that we're very proactive if we're in a state of scarcity when it comes to our key survival, food, shelter, that sort of thing. But it activates with these sales tactics. So you'll feel this urgent, I need to sort this out, I need to do it now, I might miss out. And it creates that sense of urgency. And that makes people buy, even if they don't really need the thing, or if it's not actually scarce. So that's number 1. The second one is fear of missing out. And we're all familiar with this. FOMO is real. And how they use this in sales is they will say, 500 people have this in their cart. Or it's how influencers work. The influencer will show you their purchases, what they've got, and it creates this sense of, they've got this one, maybe I'll have this. Those sorts of techniques where they will highlight everybody's doing this, everyone's got this. And it also hits the parts of our brain that are monitoring our social status. And it will make us feel like if we want to keep up with the Joneses as such, that we need to have this thing. And it's not conscious. It's not like, I need to have this because Debbie's got it. It's very subconscious. We'll just feel like if we don't get this thing, then we'll be missing out on something. So that's the second one. And then the third one is something called deal rush. And this is where it triggers the reward center in our brain. It's like gambling. Gambling triggers reward centers, even if you don't actually win. It's the anticipation. And what happens with these sales is our sense of reward and anticipation is separated from the item itself and is actually created around the deal. And so this is what they'll use here are things like showing you a big percentage reduction, 50% off, 80% off. And so our reward centers of our brain are triggered by the deal, unrelated to the value of the item. And this is where you'll buy something you don't need, don't want, because it's such a bargain. This one here is my own personal demon. If I see a bargain, it's really hard to then step back and go, yes, it's a bargain, but I don't need it. And one of my favorite sayings is, it's always 100% off if you don't buy it when you don't need it. And that's something we can all use. Okay, so now that we know what the triggers are, what are the things we can do to help give us back some control over our spending? The first thing is that awareness, being aware of exactly what triggers and cognitive biases they're using on you can help you to create that little bit of space. And then you can see, and take a bit of time, am I being swept up, or is this something I actually need? Another really important point here is, if you are emotionally vulnerable, you're tired, stressed, bored, upset, this is the time to avoid at all costs online or in-person browsing, because you won't have the emotional reserves to be able to step back from those triggers. They're much more likely to get you when you're in an emotionally vulnerable state. The second one is really helpful if you've got the time, pre-committing. So before the sales come, so it's probably too late for Black Friday, but say Boxing Day sales, in the lead up, have a bit of a think about, well, what are the things that I do need? Are there some things that I would like, or that I really, that I'd really want, or I really need? And create a bit of a list. And then you can keep an eye, and if they come on sale in the Boxing Day sales or the Black Friday sales, then you can act on that. The other thing is creating a limit. So having, this is how much money I can spend on Black Friday, and these are the things that I want to spend them on if I can get a good deal. And if you've created those limits for yourself, it's much easier to stay within those limits. And then you're getting the things that you actually want, rather than being swept up by deal rush. And then the last tip, and this is the in the moment tip, is pause. Pause before you buy. This is where you can kind of get out of that deal rush, limited time only, must do now. Write it down, save it, whatever, and then take a pause. Step away. If you can, leave it for 24 hours and then come back if you still want it. It gives our prefrontal cortex, which is our executive function, higher level cognitive thinking, planning, evaluating part of our brain, time to catch up with the amygdala, which has gone ding, 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 and the reward centers. And that way, if you still really want it, really need it in 24 hours, or if there's less time pressure, in a few days or in a week, and then come back and you can get it. But you might find that some of the time you just don't. And when your brain gets time to catch up, you'll actually think, yes, that's a good deal, but I don't need the thing. So I'm going to take the 100% discount. So awareness is the number one key here. If you know these are the triggers, this is what they're using, and then you can make an educated choice. You can make an informed choice that, yep, it's not just the deal, I want this particular thing, and yep, go for it. So I hope this is helpful. Apologies if you've already gone crazy in Black Friday, but this is something that you can come back to over and over. Do I need this right now? Can I take a pause? Is it something that I've pre-committed to? And what tricks are they using? And without the tricks, do I still need this thing? Anyway, that's part 1, survival guide for the silly season. Next week, I will have a look at this weird feeling of having to wrap everything up by the end of the year. So I'll hopefully see you for that one. Have a great week.